Hello. Today we're going to be going over the installation of Print Manager Plus on the various different types of networks that it can be installed on. So let's start off with some basics. Print Manager is a Windows application and service, and it can be installed on Windows Server 2003, 2008, and 2012. It can also be installed on Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10 as an application and service. Depending on your network, if you're a simple work group not using any kind of server, Print Manager can be installed inside a work group and track printing through that work group. It can also be installed on a single server setup. And here you can see some of the diagrams starting with a work group. And next we'll go to a diagram of a print server installation. And this is where you would use your server with shared Windows print queues, where the workstations are actually sending their print job to a server, and then that print job is then moving to the printer. Then we get into enterprise installations. Here you may have multiple print servers. And again, whether it's one server or hundreds of servers, Print Manager can support your setup. And the last thing here is, how is your printing done? Whether it's through a server or if you're doing direct IP printing, serverless printing will also track that as well. And this does include workstations that have an independent printer connected to them as well. We'll be able to track those printers as well. So let's go over now to what setups are needed before you install Print Manager Plus. One, you want to make sure that the operating system that you are going to install this on needs to be fully updated through .NET 4.5. And in the case of Active Directory, that you set up a domain service account. If you're using multiple servers, you'd want to set up a domain service account that the service can run under. That domain service account then needs to be made a local administrator of the servers that you're installing it on. And all of this data can be found under our support area under requirements, installation recommendations, and best practices. And we go through checklists for each type of setup here, as well as what ports Print Manager Plus opens and uses, what permission levels are needed for the installation of the product. Print Manager Plus can also be used in a Windows cluster environment and also using Citrix or terminal services on a network. Now, there are other pieces to Print Manager Plus which we will go over as we go through the installation today. And these can be used or not used on your network, and they have different benefits, which we'll go over as well. Okay, so let's start off here because we don't want to make this too complicated for all of our different types of customers. So we're just going to go straight to the installation. Now, the product, of course, can be downloaded right from our website, a fully functional 30-day free trial. In the case that you purchased it, you also receive a license key that you can implement after running the product. So we'll go ahead and run this. This is being run on a 2008 R2 server, fully updated. So we'll agree to the terms and conditions. Now, here are the three options you get. The installer package for this product includes all of our software for different setups, and they're all featured here. When using a single server or in an enterprise situation with many different servers, always you would install first a primary installation of the product. The primary installation of the product can actually be installed anywhere on your network. It sets up or installs a local SQL Express database for the data, or you can also select an existing enterprise SQL database that you can use on your network. And that is the primary function of this server. One, it sets up an IIS site for your web portal and cloud printing and all your reporting. It also does all the work in the background if you're running Active Directory or LDAP, where it synchronizes that with your database. Okay, the next option, after you would install the primary installation, you could also install additional print servers. This is if you had those in an enterprise situation. And this just installs the service that tracks the printing that's going through the Windows print queues on that server and ties it back to your existing SQL database. Now, Workstation is a little different. There's actually a few applications in here. So we'll check this and click Next, and you can see these here. So we basically give you three options. The most common is the print client. The print client is a little app that sits in the tray on a workstation, and this is for your pop-up messages. So if a restriction or quota or some kind of notification is initiated by our primary server, this will allow this pop-up to pop up on the workstation that it's installed on. And this also includes client billing as well. If you would like to set up a separate administration interface of the product, where you had another administrator who would like to administrate it, you can install just the administrator interface, pointing it back to the primary server. Now here's your tracking and printing services. This is specifically for workstations, and the reason for this is very obvious. It says it right here: tracking of local print queues directed at direct networking printing and locally attached printing devices. So essentially, if you're doing direct IP, you'd have to install this tracking service on each workstation on the network, if you were serverless, for instance, and you're doing direct IP printing. Or maybe you do use a print server, but you do have workstations that have locally attached printers. You would install this on that workstation to track that locally attached printer. Okay, so we're going to click back here. But before we do, we'll go over one other item. On the print client and on tracking and printing services, there is a silent installation that can be configured. And this can also be found on our website under the support area, how to configure that silent installation across your network for the larger enterprise. All right, so let's click back. We're going to uncheck this, and we are going to check primary installation, because that's one we're going to do today. And we'll click Next. And here it gives you two options. Setup will download and install SQL Express, or use an existing instance if one has already been installed previously. Or you can do a custom, which in this case would be your enterprise SQL server on your network, and you could select that with the proper rights, and it would create the database on that server. In this case, we're going to install Windows 2008 Express. Here you'd put in your service account information with your domain. I'm just going to do a local administrator, as this is just a single server. And we'll click Next for the installation. And the install starts. We do check your server for specific files that are needed. We will go to Microsoft's website and download any DLLs that are needed. And also, in this case, we're also going to download the entire SQL 2008 R2 Express version and then install our database on it for you using that service account. Later on, the installation will also install IIS services if needed, and set up our web portal and a website for your use. In this case, what we'll do is we're going to fast forward through this install, as this can take up to about 4 to 5 minutes to finish. Welcome back from our installation. After the installation completes on your server, it does require a reboot of the server workstation that you install Print Manager on. Next, we're going to be opening the administrator. When you open it for the first time, it will go over some questions. In this case, if you were downloading evaluation, you could actually evaluate the different editions of Print Manager. Or if you've purchased, click on existing license, and you can actually select an existing license file, which we have. And then we click next. Here it does a default cost profile for your printers. This is just automatic. It's something that you can change right here, or at a later time you can also change. And we'll click next. Here is a setup for a master administrator account for the product. So we'll go ahead and put a password in here. And this is just in case you lose your password through AD. It's a backdoor to get in here once again. And we'll click finish. And this will open the interface for the first time. Don't be alarmed, there's nothing in the interface. As people start to print through this interface, users will show up, groups will show up, organizational units will show up, etc. So there you have it. That's the installation of Print Manager Plus. And now you would go and install either your print client or your other workstation tracking services or remote administrator interface if you're on an enterprise. All right. Thank you for your time.